Welcome to Prescribed Respawn for 2021. The Gaming Emergency Department returns in a new and different format of the world of pre-recording. We are back again for another year with our panel of medical and other professionals to discuss with you real life scenarios that may or may not play out in games uh, very well. They don't translate, let's say. A couple of housekeeping things to get started. First off, this panel does feature medical and other professionals discussing real medical procedures and may feature, and does feature, I should say, medical imagery. Any patient material that is used is de-identified and presented with consent, and any attendee discretion who has any kind of issues viewing or considering any kind of medical procedures is advised. We are also discussing games, so heavy spoiler alert is definitely in play here. We, of course, apologise in advance. Consider this your one major spoiler announcement. We won't be saying spoiler before we discuss every single part of gaming-related information as we get to it. So, again, your discretion is advised. And lastly, clips and images from games are shown for both illustrative and discussion purposes only. Any and all rights to that content are retained by content creators and owners. We are purely here as entertainment for yourselves and hopefully ourselves. Starting off, if the panelists are happy, I will let them do their own little self-introductions. But if they wish to kick it back to me, I'm happy to do so. So starting with the illustrious Dr. Evil.
Hello, Internet and prescribed respawners. I'm Dr. Evil. I'm a general practitioner and I'm training in surgery. Once upon a time, I was the real-life medic in a first-person shooter in some places we don't talk about. Nowadays, I'm barely trusted with scissors, but I'm working on it. This year, a couple of favorite games of mine were a couple of FPSs, Doom Eternal, great game, recommend. The Ghost Recon's Call of Duties, and a nice time sync with some real-world applications, Plague Inc. Check it out.
Thank you, Dr. Evil. Dr. Bones, over to you.
My name is Bones. I'm an orthopedic surgeon and spine surgeon. As you can tell, I'm obsessed with Thor and Mjolnir. This year, obviously, trying to find new hobbies during continuing COVID. I have been playing the Deus Ex series, catching up on that, finishing up the Arkham series, finishing the God of War game, the Spider-Man game, and getting into a little bit of Witcher 3, which I've discovered is a little bit of a time sink. So that's been fun. Also rediscovered the joy of painting too, painting miniatures. So that's been my indoor hobby during the constant lockdowns.
I'm going to have to send you my order, I think. I have some that need doing.
Okay, I'm there.
Dr. Doom.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm an addiction and general medical registrar. I've got way more models than I have time to paint them. I do have a couple of small children, and so I haven't been able to play a video game in nearly a decade. I also haven't had any time to paint any miniatures in at least a year, despite having quite a few on my desk to be painted. Realistically, fortunately, D&D doesn't take a whole lot of time in each sitting, so occasionally I get to spend some time playing D&D, and it is definitely a game.
You will not hear anything other than that at this panel today. Dr. Death.
Yes, hello again. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I rolled a nat one last year. I'm an anatomical pathology registrar, which means I live in a laboratory. I hide away and play with chemicals and microscopes. I don't talk to real live patients anymore, but yes, we are doctors. I can't list all my favorite games here, but I've got some classics. Pokemon Go is unfortunately in my pocket because it's in my phone, so just every now and then it opens itself. And yes, Dr. Doom D&D absolutely counts.
Thank you, Dr. Death. Joining us for the first time this year is the illustrious Colonel Chaos. Colonel.
Well, welcome everybody. Please stand at ease. 36 years of military service from private through to colonel. Nowadays, professional bad guy, making stuff up to help us do better. A lot I can't really talk about. That's pretty much me.
That works.
I feel just a black line should go across your video stream now and forever. I think we would all be better off for it as well.
But I have learned to drink whiskey.
Our unseen member who isn't on stream with us does all this wonderful design work and overlay that you can see around things. Is our Master Chief of Design. He really is our unsung hero, but we do like to thank him and make sure that he is appropriately acknowledged in everything that we do, because all of his pretty graphics are just utterly amazing. So thank you again to the Master Chief of Design over at Born and Thread. So we've met the panel, we've done our disclaimers. That's kind of the introductory part over. So Dr. Evil, if you don't mind, I think we will literally jump
right
into
in
some content.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
All right. So I love physics, and I love the interaction that physics have with the human body, especially in hilarious circumstances. Nowadays, on a lot of first-person shooters, your PUBGs, your Grand Theft Autos, and I think the main character in Just Cause was actually the parachute, and anyone else was the supporting character. So, like, parachute use in a tactical environment, I'm happy to get the Colonel's take on this, is actually not as broad-based as games would have us think. Now, there's lots to talk about when it comes to the physics behind parachutes and the types of parachutes, because there are sport parachutes that you can sort of fly with. And then there are standard canopy parachutes that are basically designed to delay your descent or bring it to a survivable rate. Now, if we work on the premise, and it's not a premise so much as a physics fact that gravity is 9.8 meters a second. So that's how quickly you accelerate. If you're able to reduce that speed and land correctly, then you should survive the impact and then be able to continue the fight. But let's have a look at this. So a sport parachute changes your descent rate from 9.8 meters a second, depending on how far you've fallen, to anywhere between 4 to 12 meters a second. So that's how quickly you're falling. Sport parachutes are actually not designed for people to just land on the battlefield and get on with it. They're actually designed to sort of move forward because they have something called a glide ratio. A standard round type parachute, the military T10, doesn't have a lot of forward and back. It kind of just, you drop straight down. And your average rate of descent is about 22 to 24 feet per second. So if anyone has jumped off something, say a piece of playground equipment, and landed awkwardly, you're going maybe 2 to 4 meters a second. Now think about this very carefully. Double that speed and you're landing with a whole bunch of gear on your back. If you don't do it properly, what has 2 femurs and isn't able to actually shoot their rifle? Probably you.
So bringing back that to say I'm in COD Warzone and I decide that I don't want to take the stairs. I want to take the quick elevator down and deploy my parachute on a building that's about sort of 10 stories.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You're going to get to the lobby really quickly.
And my parachute won't open.
No, it won't.
Yeah. And boys and girls, public service announcement, 10 stories up is if you fall from that height, you're not walking away.
No.
No.
So the average 30-story building is about 300 to 350 feet, give or take, depending on how high the ceilings are. A distance for a parachute to open under ideal circumstances is 150 to 350 feet. So if you have a drogue or another device that's going to open the parachute as soon as you leap off the ledge, it may open in 150 feet, which is about 40 to 50 meters. If you don't have that, you're going to be creating smears on the pavement because the parachute isn't going to open in time enough to slow you down for the point where...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But
implying
will it-
it's not ideal.
Yeah, it's. I mean, walking is always nice to be able to do.
Get your steps in, take the stairs. What are you on about?
Yeah.
It's,
Tactical base jumping, not so good.
I might keep us slightly moving along as engrossing as that one was. I know that you have a lot of stuff that you want to cover, though.
Now this was a fan favorite from last year, because who doesn't love an explosion? And what's better than a smaller explosion, but a bigger explosion? So let's go to the bigger one.
Ooh.
Okay, let's talk about the biggest one. And that would be a nuclear device. And so there are lots of different types of nuclear devices. So there's fission, there's fusion, the place where it detonates, so whether it's on the surface, whether it's subsurface, or whether it's up in the air, or even what's called a high altitude burst. But we'll work on not necessarily those types of explosions so much as the effects that a nuclear device produces. And those are the blast effect, the thermal effect, the radiation, and the electromagnetic effect. Now, we'll focus on the blast and thermal, because I know that Dr. Bowen...
Well, I got some stuff on radiation. Lots of Fallout stuff. Lots of Fallout stuff.
You're going to have plenty of time to be able to get through.
Yeah, I'll finally be able to cover it.
Yeah, we've missed it for 2 years so far, so let's let's absolutely get to it. So the clip playing at the moment is actually touted as one of the more realistic airburst explosions of a nuclear device. And if you can pick the movie, fantastic, but that's Terminator 2. And you can see immediately that people get a really good tan, and they also get swept away or blown to smithereens. And that's the blast and the thermal effects, or the pressure and the thermal effects from a nuclear explosion. So if we talk about the loudest noises that you can get, and we go to the wind or the overpressure that's produced from a nuclear device, and these feature in games like Command & Conquer, COD, anything you like. A nuclear device produces a pressure and an overpressure wave that essentially smacks things around, creates a vacuum, and then smacks it around again. And when you if we look at a 1 megaton device, at about half a mile from ground zero is going to produce 30 psi of overpressure, which essentially just shreds everything in its path. Buildings are gone, and people are not paced, they're tiny little particles. When we get down to 20 psi, which is about 1 mile away from a 1 megaton airburst device, then you're still universally dead. You get torn asunder, you get thrown up against hard structures, and you get peppered with shrapnel. If you go out to 3 miles, you're at 10 psi, give or take, and you're still pretty much considered unsalvageably injured. And fatalities are typically close to 100%. Those only start dropping down when you're about 4 to 7 miles away from ground zero, at least with that size of device, when it's not that the blast overpressure has an effect, because it begins dissipating up and out into the atmosphere, so much as you begin getting peppered with shrapnel and broken bits and pieces from all the buildings that have been torn asunder. Your eardrums may survive if you're 10 miles or more away from ground zero. Otherwise, something's going to be bleeding by that time. So even with an airburst or a ground burst device, duck and cover is just not going to cover it. Just be somewhere else.
I had no idea how wide a range that was. That is genuinely.
That's just 1 megaton.
That's
just
genuinely
like baby.
That's lightweight now.
So 1 megaton,
Scary.
1 million equivalent tons of TNT. And that doesn't even account for the thermal effects, which is essentially right throughout that entire continuum. You're either being charbroiled or cooked, or getting a really, really nice tan.
Well,
but Dr. Evil, I think probably the most critical effect of a nuclear blast is the electromagnetic pulse, which means most people's iPhones will stop working.
And that is the true tragedy of nuclear warfare.
It's all right. Like your eardrums are burst, so you can't hear Siri anyway.
Yeah, but who am I going to tweet to?
You've probably got about 1/12 of a second before the pressure wave hits you.
Have finally found a benefit for these sort of arms. Getting rid of Twitter.
Well, if we talk about arms that really shouldn't be around, let's talk about chemical weapons. Now, these were banned by the ICRC pretty much well after World War II, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Colonel.
Probably one.
There was a moratorium on them in after World War One, and then I think it was officially brought in closer to World War Two. But in the Twitter sphere, I'm happy to be critiqued on that. That's fine. But chemical weapons come in 5 broad categories. Now, there's choking agents, which impede your ability to breathe, hence the name. There are blister agents, which essentially cause a chemical reaction on mucosal surfaces, and this entire thing is a mucosal surface. Dr. Bones is more or less a mucosal surface in orthopedic form. And essentially it irritates it to a point of blistering, and that if that makes it down to the lungs, it has secondary effects on the lungs as well.
I am pretty irritable.
You are. I would classify you as a blister agent.
Yep.
Now, nerve agents, your classic sort of hydrogen cyanide acts directly on the ability of organs to signal one another. And then you've got your blood agents as well. So blood agents actually displace the ability of a unit of blood, so say the heme molecule within the hemoglobin, to actually function carrying oxygen. And then you've got some of your more lethal agents, which are your CS gas, your tear gas, and so forth. So
I'm going to have to ask you for if you have a summary for this slide, Dr. Evil, to continue moving us along.
The worst thing that ever happened to me, and Colonel, that may have happened to you as well, we did our familiarization training with these sort of agents, and they locked us in a room, didn't they, with no personal protection other than our gas mask, rolled in a canister of tear gas and said, you've got 5 seconds before you start crying. And it doesn't.
But they lied. They lied.
It's not 5 seconds.
Not 5 seconds.
What was it, tear gas, or was it just Nickelback?
Nickelback takes less than 5 seconds.
I think they're both banned under the Geneva Convention.
The nasty part about all of this is you don't necessarily see it, taste it, or can smell it, because a lot of these will actually be.
No, but you can hear Nickelback.
I choose deafness over Nickelback. So.
Well, thank you, Dr. Evil. We are going to have to shoot forward a bit as time being a factor for our presenting here, and I'm going to jump us over to Dr. Death.
Oh, well, thank you. All right, so last time I was around, we talked about zombies, and specifically the T. Veronica virus from Resident Evil and its correlate in real life, the Lissa or rabies virus, the virus of madness. And it turned out we had some scientists and doctors in the audience who came up and had a chat to me afterwards, and they all said, but you didn't talk about this thing that I'm about to talk about next. So this one's a shout out for the fans. Zombies. Sorry, was that too dramatic?
No, it's good.
So this time we'll be focusing on the flood parasite from Halo.
So Death, Dr. Death, if you will, the groovy character in the bottom left-hand corner of that image, has he come through your lab at some point or another?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
That's a yes.
Oh, hang on. You're looking at the next slide. Anyway, or actually, it could be either. Anyway, so the flood parasite from Halo, or slightly lesser, but also the cordyceps brain infection from The Last of Us. So the question is, could it really happen? Could we be taken over and enslaved to a villainous, malicious hive mind? Well, in real life, if we go to my next slide, there's these little suckers. So over on the left, in the very pink looking pictures, are cysts filled with the immature version of Toxoplasma gondii, or toxoplasmosis. So this is an infection, I said hiding in plain sight, because almost half the world is infected with this parasite. Most of us are obviously asymptomatic and completely unaffected. you have to be already very sick with other things like immunocompromise and whatever before it actually becomes a problem. But my favorite part of this is that the definitive host are felines, and exclusively felines. So cats are the master race, and we are their intermediate host or slave.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the image of the definitive host, is that your cat, Dr. Depp?
That is a British short hair, which is my master, yes. That is Dr. Death's supervisor.
So, Dr. Death, can you identify people, the 50% of the population who are infected by this, by the fact that they have cats and cardigans?
Well, there is some saying that the phrase mad cat lady was traced back to this. So now, again, before I go on, even though like 50% of the world is infected with this, everything now is sort of medical urban legend. All of the studies haven't supported this, but there is some saying that toxoplasma, as given to us by cats as their intermediate host, can cause impulsivity, risk-taking behaviors, just general behavioral changes and susceptibility, which...
Knitting?
What?
Knitting?
Knitting's a perfectly normal hobby.
Diagnosis confirmed.
Yes. Anyway, so I mean, look, if we were all being mind controlled, would we know? But I think there's a pretty low likelihood that toxoplasma is controlling all of us. However, in IRL, the cordyceps brain infection or the flood parasite from Halo would probably be toxoplasmosis. Although there's another cordyceps fungus in real life, which I won't get into and doesn't affect humans. So don't be worried.
Ooh, future content.
Only bad if we're ants.
Yes, only bad if we're ants. Thank you.
Yes.
Bones. But moving on. So to talk about something else, which I think Dr. Doom is going to expand on later as well. As we were saying, Dungeons and Dragons is a game. Yes, it really is. And as my dungeon master says, it's all about world building. So,
is your dungeon master different to the cat?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
The cat is also.
That's an important distinction.
It is.
No, I don't sit here with the cat telling me what adventures we're going on and then I roll some dice. That would just be weird.
That'd be weird.
That's the next stage of disease.
But there would be a total YouTube channel in that, though.
Yeah.
It would be. Just a slow blink, and then you go, I got to roll a d20.
I'm just going to make a note here for future content.
Right, future content. I'll please make a note. I'll talk about it next year. Anyway, so I've picked 2 spells to talk about, as in could they happen in real life and how would they manifest if they happen. So the first spell is called Modify Memory. It's an enchantment which, if successfully cast, means that 10 minutes from the preceding 24 hours can be erased, altered, or completely replaced with a new memory. It's one of those situations of the guy with the folding table, like, modify memory is the best spell, change my mind. Anyway, so in real life, could prolonged or repeated use.
The Colonel has some modified memory in his glass at the moment.
Don't we?
This is true.
But yes, okay, so we'll get to that on the next slide. So the postulate is, could prolonged or repeated use cause permanent memory loss? So if we go to the next slide, there are multiple things, and I haven't actually listed them all now that people have reminded me, that we use as doctors as legal appropriate medications, and that a lot of people self-medicate with unsupervised, which can delete, alter, or potentially replace things with new memories. So I might throw it open to the panel of doctors who still see patients now, but there's certain drugs like benzodiazepines and ketamine, which can cause very small periods of memory to be lost or altered. And then, of course, alcohol and marijuana, which people take themselves.
So
yeah, seeing someone who's been given ketamine post-operatively and is dropped down the K-hole is not a fun time for anyone.
You say that. Okay, and be terrified because I'm not a doctor who sees patients, but there was a time when, in an appropriate context, I gave a patient ketamine to reduce their shoulder dislocation because various other things had been trialed and didn't work. And I'd been told that there could be risks of this. And I spoke him into a happy place mentally before we gave it to him, and I think he seemed quite comfortable. It seemed to work.
Well, it is a battlefield anesthetic.
Yeah.
So,
And as not a doctor at all, we like to use information operations and information warfare to make people think different things, commonly known as pick your favorite TV station.
So I'm working in pediatric surgery at the moment, and I want to start a YouTube channel called Kids on Ketamine because it's
That would be very hard to get through an ethics committee.
Ethics.
Well,
But,
with the in the pediatrics, then, so have you encountered any of the anesthesiasts that administer? The shortened name I know is Medaz.
Midazolam.
Yeah.
That 100% wipes out your memory for a little bit, and you can pick the moment where you got clarity, and then when you have forgotten. Or at least that's the experience I had when I had my general anesthetic.
But I'm going to flick this to Doom. There are the Z drugs, the zolpiclones, the zolpidems, the quaaludes, the methaqualones, which were designed initially as anxiolytics, relaxants, or to help with sleep. But people found that if they fought through those effects, that you could stay awake and then start having these wonderful sort of hallucinations. So what I'm really asking is, can I use these to see a dragon rather than avoiding a dragon?
You might be able to see the dragon, but the after effects of meeting said dragon's probably not beneficial to your health.
Okay.
I'm going to hijack this back for Penny, just because we're going to keep her slides cranking.
Obviously, all substances should be consumed in legal and sensible ways. Okay, so my second spell here is harm. 6th level necromancy, instantaneous. You go from, if you're the hapless victim of this, you go from being fine to being instantaneously, surprise, surprise, harmed until the effects of this wear off. And as I was reading over it, you take some necrotic damage. What does that mean? Like, you're fine, you're invisibly in you're in agony, but no one can see it, and then you're fine again. Well, in real life, I cast gout, so I don't know. Sorry.
It's great.
I've become a drama llama. Anyway, so this is one interpretation, or my interpretation, of harmful necrotic damage. It's a condition which is invisible. For anyone, not me, thank goodness, but for anyone who's suffered it, it's exquisitely painful, usually affecting joints like the toes, the elbows, can be anywhere though, like your earlobe. It's anywhere where these urate crystals accumulate because of your gout. So the pretty pink pictures are basically showing what's invisible to the naked eye, but what we look at under the microscope. Ooh.
It's a microscope.
It kind of looks like a spell circle.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Death, that's in your home office? Like, you have your microscope at home?
Yeah, well, this is one of them.
So hang on, are you bringing work home with you?
No, that's just a study.
How many microscopes do you have?
Maybe 3.
What's this one called?
Stephen.
No. What's the model number?
Oh, it's it could be X45.
I thank you, Dr. Death, for
I have a pressing question, Dr. Death.
Yes.
Do you have a Dexter-esque collection of microscope slides?
You're just being facetious. You know
yes.
But anyway, I don't have any time to show you slides tonight. But to wrap it up, gout is super pretty. We love it because it's these shard-like needles which are negatively birefringent. So we look at it with polarized light under the microscope, and that's how we diagnose it. And that's what the pictures are on the slide. In the really dark-looking slide, the little blue specks, that's the gout.
Amazing.
So if I'm out at the pub and I have a sore knee or foot afterwards, it's because the guy I was arguing with was a necromancer.
And he cast harm. I think so.
We can
Always,
either
because you've got
we
gout and you ate too much seafood, beer, you got dehydrated, and you're not taking your medication. But
So I met a necromancer. I see.
So much
I'm,
like a necromancer, suppressing fire can bring death and destruction too.
yeah.
So pretty much everyone's seen like lay down the suppressing fire as they like begin to launch into whatever it is that they're going to do. So the really interesting thing that I note about games and movies is that suppressing fire is like generally a lot of machine gun fire, like a lot of bullets, an incredible amount of volume of fire downrange towards roughly where you think the bad guys or the good guys, depending on the angle of the camera, are at. Now, the interesting thing about suppressing fire is that if it's voluminous and random, it ain't that suppressing. What really suppresses the living daylights out of you is if someone is shooting one bullet about every 5 seconds to roughly where you are. Because let me tell you, that will keep your head down. And while your head's down, you're thinking, they're moving around to come and make my day really bad. So suppressing fire is pretty much most effective if you can put like a well-aimed shot roughly where they are. In fact, ideally where they are, because that's very suppressive if they actually get hit.
That's oppressive. That's oppressive fire.
Oppressive, yeah. But so look, in the lesson here is don't be important, keep your head down, don't be seen, and if someone's shooting like one round roughly every 5 to 6 seconds where you are, they actually know where you are, and if you're going to stick your head up, you're going to be like that guy. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
So, are you saying that when most people say suppressing fire, to quote The Princess Bride, I do not think that word means what you think it means?
That's inconceivable.
That's correct. Now let's move on to that volume of fire. Machine guns. I love watching machine guns fire. They are just a thing of beauty, and particularly at night, because what most people don't realize is that at night, if you're firing a lot and you're doing a lot of that sort of random high volume machine gun suppressing fire, then if you look really closely, you can actually see after a little while the bullet going through the barrel, because the barrel is so red to nearly white hot, you can see through it. And so that's why we have a thing called a crew-served weapon. So most machine gun teams are 2 people. And about every 4 to 5 minutes, you need to change the barrel. Otherwise, your barrel's going to melt and droop. And as we know, no one likes a droopy barrel. So what you need...
As a medical professional, I can potentially help with that.
Well, what you can do is you can put a glove on and grab the nearly drooping barrel and change it out for one that is less droopy.
Are they oven mitts?
Oven mitts, yeah.
They're oven mitts.
Well, yeah, basically oven mitts, yeah.
No, correction, they are military issue oven mitts.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Don't bring your...
I'm not going to ever accept cupcakes from you.
Yeah, no, don't do that. So look, end of the day is crew-served weapons. Really important. Machine guns do not shoot forever. After about 4 or 5 minutes, if you've been shooting that machine gun non-stop, then you're going to have some like real problems with where your bullets are going. They're not going on the target. So let's have a look at something else that's pretty exciting, which is the rocket-propelled ouch. So everyone loves grabbing the old on the shoulder, kaboom. Well, let me tell you from absolute personal experience. If you're firing something like this, it is literally like someone hits you with a piece of wood from the tip of your toe to the top of your head when you push that trigger. And, there's this thing called physics where it's like equal and opposite force. So you're shooting this thing like this big, packed full of explosions and really like bad love letters to people, and off it goes. But out the other end has to be enough force that it shoots it that way at about, maybe 300 meters per second. And so, like, if you're in a car or you have like a bunch of friends over for a camping day and you're like in the tent or they're just in the room, you'll have less friends at the end of that experience. So yeah, it's called a backblast danger area. And the BBDA needs to be clear, because otherwise you're going to overpressurize everyone. People are going to, like, their toast is going to get really burnt. And speaking of eardrums, like before, they're not going to be hearing you anymore, which in some cases could be an advantage if you're particularly boring, but in other cases, not so.
If I'm hearing you correctly, though, Colonel, if I'm in a close quarters combat environment and it's just me, and I've got enemy to my rear, I've got enemy in my front, I slung an RPG on my shoulder and hit the tickle button. The guys in front of me are going to be vaporized by whatever, front ordnance travels out the back. And this BBDA traveling out the rearward is going to deal with the hostiles to my flank.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. That's a gutsy move. But yeah, sure. Everyone's a winner in that example.
If you're in a confined space, though, does the shockwave bounce around and turn you into jelly?
It's physics. It's physics. It's fine. It's a
physics,
but it just not work.
What does turn you into jelly is a thermobaric weapon, where it essentially like lobs a little bomb into the room, releases like a little chemical spray, much like you do when you air a guard in a tent, and then someone lights a fire, and essentially that will turn you into little bits of goo. But now let's take it from the land-centric sort of weapon systems we've been talking about. Now let's talk to me, Goose. I think we're all pretty saddened by the delay of Top Gun 2. But what I can say is in Top Gun 2, in today's air-to-air combat, you ain't going to see anybody. The old days of, I was doing this and then he was doing that and we were waving, and it's like, that ain't happening anymore. Air-to-air missiles have ranges up to, and exceeding 400 kilometers. Like, that's a long way. That's like more than just, down the road and turn right. So these days, air-to-air combat are going to be conducted by a series of missiles. Now, some short-range missiles, that might be like 30 kilometers. That's still a long way. You're seeing little specks at 30 kilometers. At 400 kilometers, you're not even seeing anybody. So the whole point is, in your air-to-air combat simulators, if you're actually seeing the plane that close, things have gone really bad for you and your mates.
So you haven't done your job properly if you can see the enemy.
Yeah, that could be, and we won't get into an Air Force discussion here.
That seems fair.
We do it.
No. But when you see the enemy, things are gone pretty bad. Like if I have to fix my bayonet, like later on in this presentation, you're going to see a guy bringing a Hollywood of knives and axes. Like, I'm going to just like shoot him at 300 meters.
So do you know what an Air Force officer does with his bayonet? He slices his brie.
And on that note, I am going to carry us away from Air Force versus Army and over to Dr. Doom.
Did some quick thoughts there at the minute. 400 kilometers, that's like from here to Canberra. So, yeah.
So that's a lot of people.
Yeah. If I were to survive one of these things, how fast am I going to be able to actually heal up from it? I mean, that's the most important question, isn't it? So this is literally in all the RPGs. Yeah, most of the first-person shooters. Obviously, it's you want to be able to play a game and continue playing the game. So it makes sense to be able to heal pretty quickly. But if we had to think about this in the real world, how fast can you actually heal? A lot of it depends on the actual injury. If you have a little scrape or a paper cut, do you have something that's a bit more serious? Did you roll your ankle? Did you cut yourself really badly? You're losing half an arm. Yeah. Have you managed to stitch it up before you had to keep going? And always, is it just a flesh wound? Or have you lost a bone or broken it there? And it always depends. So how does a body actually heal? Well, the first thing we've got to do is stop the bleeding. Now, that's from a couple of different things. Sometimes we can help it along by putting pressure on the wound. Yeah. Sometimes those little platelets hanging around in our blood vessels hang around and wander down and say, "Oh, there's a cut. We'll hang hold. We'll pull it shut." And then, eventually it takes a little while, because after that, you've got to keep it all clean. You've got to rebuild everything. You've got to get it stronger, and you got to take a lot of time before it's back to its full strength. And bruises, that can take a couple of days. Cuts, depending on the size, days to weeks, if it's an open wound or if it's been stitched shut. The bones will take 4 to 6 weeks, to be able to use it properly again. But full strength can take, months and months. Some of the serious wounds, like, things like, you've caught in the back blast and that BBDA we talked about, probably going to take a long time to recover from that. So health potions is the way to go. We're going to have to come up with some of those. I'm going to figure that one out. Either that or we might have to see if Dr. Death's Dungeon Master's got a handy cleric hanging around. Got any of them heals hanging about, maybe?
We should just all travel to Tamriel, take a nap on the side of the road. We'll be completely healed. It'll be fine.
Sounds like a great idea. And I
hour.
tell you what, I am not going to take a long rest in that dungeon. There's no way I'm going to do that.
So I want to preface all of this with Prescribe Respawn is not sponsored. Well, not currently sponsored, but we're
open to sponsorship.
But surely Red Bull's got to help with this somehow, somewhere.
Caffeine.
Yeah, caffeine will make you not care about it so much, and you'll be able to push on for a little while.
Your blood pressure and your heart rate will be up, though, so you're probably going to bleed a little bit more.
Yeah, that's why you put pressure on the wound, keep it closed.
The caffeine
the word
helps.
Bone at Doom, so I don't think Bones was paying attention.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that's okay. Hey, Bones, how long does it take for a proper nasty broken bone to heal?
Well, so whenever we do surgery, the rough rule of thumb because surgery is like a controlled trauma. So I tell people, yes, it takes 2 weeks for the skin to heal, but then all the soft tissue takes anywhere up to 6 weeks to 3 months to heal. The bone by that stage is thrown down at scaffolding, but it's still remodeling. So it can take even up to 6 months before it's fully remodeled, especially in areas like spine surgery. You can take 6 to sometimes even 12 months for it to fully heal and remodel. And then after all your healing is done, during that entire period, you're still rehabilitating and getting your strength and confidence back. So your thing about taking months to years is accurate.
Right. So more than one long rest is what you're saying.
More than one long rest.
Okay. Right.
That long rest would be what we call a coma.
Well,
right. Okay. Right. But I can still carry stuff with that, right?
I was going to say, yeah. Speaking of getting injuries,
yeah. So one of the mechanics that I always like to throw out in my D&D games is carrying capacity. And because it just becomes awkward, but some people like to use it. All right. And so what is your carrying capacity? It's 15 times your strength score. Your average person's score of 10, sits there at 150 pounds. And for the rest of the real world, that's 70 kilos. And what does that actually mean in real world force? So your average person's going to be 70 kilos. So, all right, you can carry your body weight is your carrying capacity.
That's how we like to do it in the army. Like, how much do you weigh? Well, we'd get a double that, and you're going to carry that.
You just carry yourself around.
Then
mathematical.
How many replacement barrels is that, Kurt?
Yeah, well, that's right.
So what does that actually mean in real world force? I put this one here for Bones, because there was a study done at the peak force through the tibia, at the maximum effort for most things. And it's anywhere between 2.5 to 4.5 times your body weight. And what's that mean? So just normal, walking around the office, your knees take 2.5 times your body weight. And if you're doing something as strenuous as doing like a tennis serve, you're looking at, over 4 times your body weight going through that. And that's just normal activities. Let's do all of that stuff and have a battle and throw on our body weight on top of us. So you're going to be getting, 5 to 8 times your body weight going through one of your knees at any given point in time.
So I'm not going to be able to outrun that death claw or the dragon that's breathing fire on me.
And this is otherwise known as the infantry.
Yeah. I did
keeping
look
low-limb
up-
surgeons and spine surgeons in a job.
Exactly. I did look up the real world peak carrying capacity for somebody, and it was over 4,000 pounds. That's pretty cool. I don't think it was sustained for very long. But don't forget that not only does the weight matter, so does the size and the space that this stuff takes up. And I've known characters that have had 4 different spears in one bag. They've got 3 bows slung over the shoulder. I've got 4 axes and a couple of hammers, 2 long swords strapped to my side. You've only got 2 hands and only so much actual body to strap stuff to. And I was able to find in the archives a picture of Colonel Chaos here back when he was a private with his backpack.
Isn't that his first day at school?
School, private.
They grow up so fast. They grow up so fast.
They do. They do.
And we had to shave as well. That was terrible.
Yeah.
He's not
It
a
was
great there, is he?
Here's all your stuff. Carry it to the barracks and then shave when you get there. And like this guy down in the corner, if you got that much stuff on, are you really going to be able to do stuff and swing that battle axe properly? I'm not sure what his action economy is going to be.
Look,
It's not good. You'd want to be at least dual wielding.
You're shifting something there. That is a human or maybe a half elf caltrop. Right?
For sure.
Yeah. His attack move is called trip and fall on you.
Yeah.
But at least it's not underneath his skin.
No, this
Either
is
that
true.
or we just shoot him at 300 meters and he's brought like a whole bunch of axes to a gunfight, which is like...
Thank you, Dr. Doom. Dr. Bones, let's take
So-
it home.
We've spoken about lots of different devices and weapons to cause injury. We've spoken about various ways to heal from said injury. But really, prevention is the best cure. So if you cannot see me, and if you cannot penetrate my skin with your damaging device, then I'm safe. So this is something that's featured a lot in various sort of future tech type games like the Deus Ex series and Cyberpunk 2077. So in the Deus Ex series, the character has a glass shield cloaking, giving him invisibility, and you can also get augments to give you subdermal armor, which can either reduce your physical damage and EMP shielding, like the rhinodermal armor, all the way through to the Titan armor, which negates all damage, albeit for a very short period. Now, what does this actually mean if we were to do this in real life? Well, when you look at the blood supply to the skin, you can see from this picture here, you've got the epithelium, which is the outer layer, which is just dead skin cells. Then you've got the live layer, which is the dermis. So that's got all those hair follicles there, the various glands. And you can see there the red and blue vessels, which are providing the blood supply to the skin, sitting between the dermis and then the fat layer underneath. So subdermal means underneath that dermis layer, which means that you're essentially separating the skin from its blood supply. Now, doing this over a short distance or short area is not such a bad or such a problem because your skin has rich anastomoses to be able to supply if you've disrupted one area. But you do it over a large area, like your entire body, and you've just starved your skin of its blood supply. And so then everything is going to start flaking off, sloughing off, and you're going to be a modern day zombie. In terms of trauma, in the real world, we have a real thing called a Morello-Lavali lesion, which is a layer deeper. It's between the fat layer and the fascia. And what can happen there is that you have a closed degloving type injury, and it's not open to the world, but there's a separation there that then you can get collection of blood and inflammatory mediators, and the infection risk of having that closed injury is actually quite high. And they've estimated that up to 46% are colonized with bacteria. So then you've got sloughy dead skin that is also infected, and you probably don't survive that too well.
The best thing to do if you've got this lesion where you've got a blood blister essentially deep in the surface is probably squeeze it onto someone. That's your offensive weapon.
Yes, and then die from sepsis. That's great.
Can we just go deeper and put it in the bones instead?
Look, I'd love to be able to make people into Wolverine. That is a secret dream. But there are problems. So whenever we put implants in, particularly in orthopedics, where we're putting in plates, screws, nails, prosthetic joints, one of the enemies is infection. And when you get an infection, there's two phases. There's the one where all the bugs float around like snowflakes in a snow globe, known as the planktonic phase. And that's where you can usually, get it and treat it with antibiotics and wash out some debridements. And your window for that is between sort of 4 to 6 weeks from the onset of the infection. Whereas once the bugs settle and find a home, what they love sticking to is anything without a blood supply. And prostheses don't have a blood supply, so they love sticking to metal. They love sticking to various implants that we use, and they form colonies there. And those colonies cover themselves in a slime called a biofilm, which is this glycocalyx, which makes it impenetrable to any antibiotics. It's not something that you can easily wash, debride, or scrub away. You can clear the surrounding area of infection, but then these little colonies send out raiding parties, which then set up a new infection at delayed periods down the track. And that becomes really hard to deal with. So essentially what you have to do is remove the prosthesis, clean any dead tissue, debride the area, wash it out several times, and to give long-term antibiotics and then do stage reconstructions. So, well, sometimes you can't salvage a limb.
You said that they send out raiding parties. So these bacteria are essentially playing an MMORPG in your body.
Yes, they are the horde. Yeah. That's what you're going for.
Dr. Bones.
So talking about world building then, hey?
Yeah, they go like a flock. On the topic of flocks, so I got to thinking as I was going through my back catalogues of games that I wanted to replay and looking at the re-release of some of the old Zelda games on the Switch, and it got me thinking about chickens. And we all know that what happens is our green tunicked hero goes around these various towns and occasionally you'll come across this hapless bird and you think, yeah, I'm a brave hero. I can defeat all sorts of beasts. Surely I can slay this chicken. Well, eventually the chicken gets very mad and he calls all of his friends and a swarm of feathery wrath ensues. And all that the hero can do is either escape or die. So it got me thinking, like, how dangerous can chickens actually be? And I actually went on a little bit of a deep dive out of this out of interest. And I was shocked to find out that your rate of dying from a chicken is quite low, but it's actually not zero. So there's been examples. The first article I came across was this poor Australian lady who owned a domestic chicken. And unfortunately, it picked just the wrong spot, one of her varicose veins, and she just bled out from it, which is a horrible tragedy. The very young and the very old seem to be the ones that are at most risk. So there's a lot of documentation of chickens attacking children. And typically, they'll go for the eyes. So eye injuries are fairly common. Also, examples of infections, retained foreign bodies. So roosters, they have spurs, which can sometimes break off, get lodged in, and that can cause a delayed infection. There's been examples of brain abscesses occurring after chicken attacks. Interestingly, I also found this study on looking at the psychology of chickens, which is interesting in itself, looking at their heart rate, aggression, and their dominance characteristics. So chickens can kill. However, should we go out and start slaying all the chickens around there and causing a mass genocide? Well, hold your horses. It's all about perspective. So when you look at the number of animal deaths that occur per year, there's a total of 105,000 animal deaths caused per year by attacks, bites, and stings, and then upwards of 500,000 to 1 million animal deaths caused by disease. However, probably the most dangerous single animal are humans, which if you look at the 2012 figures, we cause over 500,000 deaths due to homicide, war, and terrorism. In contrast, chickens will probably cause death more frequently. When I say more frequently, it's a fairly paltry amount of only about 164 deaths per year. Yeah, I went there. So the summary is that humans are more evil than chickens. Leave the chickens alone. We're the bad eggs, not them.
Well,
Dr. Bones, thank you very much. That last section was utterly foul, and I'm actually going to have to call.
But we can go on to our Vault stuff, Fallout stuff now, can't we?
Look, unfortunately, we are completely out of time.
Again?
So what we'll do
next year,
what we'll do is
definitely do it next year.
Next year we will definitely get to Fallout. Thank you all for attending and providing your expertise. That was thoroughly entertaining and informative as usual. I have been Dr. Enabler. Special thanks goes to Dr. Overlord of Overlord Industries, who helps us out behind the scenes with other bits and pieces that need doing. And thank you too to Luke and the Penny Arcade team. Once again, the Prescribed Respawn Gaming Emergency Room is presented by Evil Corp and Born and Thread. And if you like this little pin design in this corner, you can pick some up from evil.doctor over in the store. Thank you all. Hope you're having a great PAX, and we look forward to hopefully seeing everybody in person next year. Thank you.
Please, everyone, get vaccinated so we can go on with our lives. Please.
We want to see you in person.
I will beg.
Yes.